I was talking with Tom, and we, about continuing the discussion, so to speak. We had a really fun chat in September and talked about the difference between, the different cetacean types, and really covered a lot of the large whale species that can be seen in Southern California. So now we'll jump into some of the smaller marine mammals. We'll talk about dolphins, and if I don't ramble on too long, we'll even cover some of the pinnipeds, the other awesome marine mammals that can be seen here in Southern California. But as a way of a little bit of review, not about me, you've heard enough about that. So we're going to start. So the whole first half of the talk will be about dolphins, and then we'll jump over to pinnipeds. So the common phrases used for this world of cetaceans is whales, dolphins, and porpoises. But because we're going to teach you guys some science, and you guys have learned, you guys are all great naturalists, we're going to talk at a little more scientific level. So for the moment, because these are common terms that are a little bit confusing, I'm going to have you erase this phrase that's often used, whales, dolphins, and porpoises. And we're going to look at it a little bit more specifically and get you a little bit more tuned in about these animals that we're going to be talking about. So we are jumping into the world of cetaceans, revisiting some of these animals. And you might recall there are about 90 species of cetaceans, or whales, dolphins, and porpoises in the world. Cetaceans, there's a little bit of new terminology here. So cetacea currently is an undefined group of animals, likely going to become a superorder, a suborder. The orders recently were merged, which it doesn't often happen in taxonomy, but current science was able to connect the shared ancestry of archaeodactyls. And so they actually merged the two orders, long term, called Ceta archaeodactyla, which is all cetaceans, and then their very, very close ancestors, the archaeodactyls, or the even-toed ungulates. We're going to be looking just at the half of that order that includes cetaceans. And as I said, it'll probably be defined as a suborder. These groupings have not been clearly sussed out now that they're looking at redefining these. But within cetaceans, there's two groups of animals. The mysticetes, which are the ones we really covered last time, the baleen whales, the large whale species. They all have baleen in their mouth. They're filter feeders. They don't have teeth at all. And then the other group of animals are the odontocetes, and those are all the toothed whales. So technically, we'll be looking at this, dolphins are just a group within odontocetes. So they're a group of small toothed whales. And you can see here that odontocetes, because we'll be referring to this in a moment, there's 75 species of odontocetes, and that's kind of an ever-changing number. We are actually going to talk in a moment about a species that was a designation that was recently merged. And of course, with genetics and current technologies, sometimes we're also expanding. So we're often growing that number, or even reducing that number sometimes if they find that the animals are more closely related than originally thought. So we'll look at these in more detail. So again, the mysticetes are the large animals with the two blowholes and baleen in their mouth. And then and here's a humpback whale. You can see its baleen up on the upper jaw. But you guys are big, large whale and baleen whale experts, since we covered that in detail. So we're going to jump on to the odontocetes, a single blowhole, and we'll talk about that modification shortly, as compared to those mysticetes that have the two blowholes, external air openings. But the odontocetes, there's a large range in size, ranging from the vaquita. I actually should pop that here for just a sec. Let's take a look at this. The sperm whale is the largest of the odontocetes. And then this is the wide variety of sizes, all these animals that are facing to my left. Hopefully that's the way it looks to you guys too. And you can see the wide variety of size within this group of animals, down to the smallest, which is the vaquita. Let me jump back to my other slide. So they do all have teeth, and they have that single blowhole. They all utilize echolocation. Can you guys tell me a terrestrial animal, hopefully easily, that uses echolocation? You can pop off if you want, or in chat. That's right. Hopefully you guys know that. Yep, bats. And it's a different structure, a different mechanism that bats use than odontocetes use. So it was not developed or evolved in the same means, but it is the same, a biosonar. They create their own sound, and we'll look at that in just a moment. Now, odontocetes utilize communication. They have a very, very complex social structure, and they utilize communication in many ways to communicate within their groups. The social structure varies by species. For example, killer whales are in a matriarchal society. They're definitely mama's boys. The males, the large male, leaves the pod to mate and then will come back to its mother, staying with its mother for their entire life. But not all toothed whales have the matriarchal society. And some large groups of dolphins have a bit more of what they call a fission-fusion society. So groups kind of coming together and then leaving, but also kind of core pods that are staying together. So some will leave. We have mother and calves that will leave in nursery pods and then come back together, juveniles and males that will leave and come back together. But there is complex social interactions with all the odontocetes. And they tend to follow prey and do what we call disperse rather than migrate, moving from one latitude to another. So more like the large whales do. So in regards to the echolocation, now you see here, we know that the mysticetes have those two air passageways, externals, just like we do. So we have two external passageways that we use to breathe with, like the large whales. And you notice here that the odontocetes only have a single external air passageway. And I was always told when I started this, that's just because that's the way it is. Toothed whales, you know, they have the single, and baleen whales have two, and that's how you know the difference. But it wasn't until later on that it was really explained to me. And so I think now I make a point of always sharing why that is. But internally, they still have two lungs and two air passageways moving up into their brain area. Sorry, their skull area. But one of those passageways then is adapted to create that echolocation. And so basically, if you imagine the passageway coming up, one is used to exchange air, but the other is pinched off. And if you envision a balloon being pinched and letting out little bits of air at a time and making those squeaking noises, that's essentially what these air sacs and these small little muscles along the edges of those air sacs are doing. They're actually called monkey lips, these little small muscles that are letting out little bits of air, creating these chirps and whistles. And that sound is then sent through the melon, which is some fatty tissue in the forehead, and then emitted out into the environment. And it will reflect off of any hard surface, as sound does, and then be sent back and as an echo, as vibrations. And odontocetes have fatty tissue within their lower jaw that will pick up those vibrations, and then that transmit it up into their brain area where they will process it. And their brain is processing vibrations and being able to give them a very distinct picture of what's going on in the environment around them. It's very similar in the way that our brain is processing light and being able to help us, you know, read what's going on in our environment. But they do that all through using sound. Are we good? Any questions about echolocation? So we're going to look a little bit more closely within the odontocetes at one family in particular, and that's the family Delphinidae. And that is looking at the true oceanic dolphins. And I have improperly cut my slide off here. I apologize. But this list is all of the, a few of the Delphinidae, you can see here that there are 38 species. And if you remember, I highlighted the number 75. There are 75 species of odontocetes, and 38 of them are in this family Delphinidae. So over half the species of toothed whales are actually in this family. The species in this list here can be seen in the eastern North Pacific. The ones that are in bright yellow are the species that we're more likely to see here in our area on a regular occasion. And so we're going to take a look at all those species. So let's dive right in. And we'll start with the most common and one of the ones that most people would readily picture if they were to imagine, if somebody said just the word dolphin. This is the picture that comes to mind, is your common bottlenose dolphin. And they can be found around the world in most coastal areas, around offshore islands, and they're starting to split these into different species, in some cases into different subspecies. In our region, here in California, we have, or actually off of the entire eastern North Pacific, we have two populations, and we're still classifying it as population as I understand it. And we have our coastal bottlenose, and those are the ones that you can see certainly from Bolsa, Chica, often playing in the surf, riding the waves, those animals that surfers will encounter on most occasions. And they tend to travel or to stay within about 1 kilometer of shore. So quite close in most cases. But we also have a population of offshore bottlenose, and those tend to range 5 kilometers and further and be the animals that you would see out by Catalina Island or any of our offshore islands. And they tend to range a little bit further up north as well. Our California coastal bottlenose, a lot of the work that's being done on them can be done through photo identification of their dorsal fins. And a lot of this work was actually started by Dennis Kelly. So he could probably answer this a lot better than I could, but there have been really great projects up and down the coast doing photo identification of the California or of the coastal bottlenose. And using and collaborating with those, we have found bottlenose ranging up into San Francisco and all the way down into San Diego and Baja. And in some cases, the same individual. Most of them don't do the very long range. They tend to stay in a little bit more of a regional area, but they will make these longer journeys. So let's take a look at some pictures of these. This one is courtesy of Bernardo. He's an awesome photographer and has shared some photos with me. But you can see that they're a large dolphin, and our coastal bottlenose aren't even the largest. The size of bottlenose really ranges by location and region, and even the color can vary quite a bit. On the Atlantic, and some of the coastal Atlantic bottlenose are a very, very pale gray, almost in this color that you can see here on the chin. Ours tend to be in a medium gray. Our offshore is a little bit darker. And bottlenose in Baja and down into southern Mexico or southern Baja can be very, very dark, even as dark as almost black, looking like into a slate black. And offshores tend to be a little bit larger as well. Some bottlenose dolphins can be up to 1,000 pounds, which is really large. Ours definitely don't get that large. Ours usually tend to be more in the 200 to 300 pounds or so. Definitely not getting to the extent of the largest bottlenose. It tends to be a hefty and hardy sized dolphin. Probably 7 to 9 feet long, and like I said, up to 300 or 400 pounds. Can you say right off the bat, if people have seen polybottlenose dolphin? I would imagine Trudy has. They're hanging out at Crystal Cove, but most people have seen and encountered bottlenose dolphin. They're definitely a dolphin that I remember from my childhood, and Flipper was a very, very popular show. Still in my youth as well. And, I will say and be the first to admit that I wanted a pet dolphin when I was growing up. When I was a kid, I thought that was the coolest thing ever. I've learned now that that's not the case and not what I want. But at the time, I definitely thought dolphins were the coolest thing ever because of shows like Flipper. You can see this is a lot of a light as well, because this is actually here in California, but you can see the variation in color. And the notches, such as the notch here, is one of the ways, the primary way that's used to be able to create these catalogs and compare individuals by looking at those notches and creating catalogs of comparing those different dorsal fins. They can be quite acrobatic. The bottlenose in the, along the coast will often play in the surf. The ones offshore tend to be even more acrobatic and tend to be the ones that you can see doing these big, large jumps. And this is one from down off of southern Baja, I believe, out closer to the, I went to an island chain called the Revillagigedos, about 400 miles offshore. And these were some of the bottlenose that we encountered during that expedition. And you can see, it is a little sunset, so there's a light issue, but you can see they're actually quite a bit darker than our coastal bottlenose. So now we're going to move on to another species. And these are the ones that are featured, I believe, on Trudy's picture there, her backdrop as well, common dolphins. And there's been some recent new developments, so it'll be kind of fun to share. But these are the animals that you would see in larger pods. Maybe if you're crossing the channel, heading out to Catalina, they hopefully would look something like this here in my background, if they're leaping out as well. But you can see them from shore sometimes. Oftentimes you can see like a disturbance in the water offshore. It looks a little bit like the water is boiling. And if you look to one side or the other, there's usually a front end of that boil, and you can see some animals jumping. So if you see a large disturbance in the water, if you're onshore looking out, oftentimes it's large pods of common dolphins. And in the late 90s, our researchers, including a primary Dr. John Haining at the Natural History Museum, described this lower dolphin here. They were very similar and thought to be the same animal, and described it as a different species, a long-beaked common dolphin. You can see that they both have this cape, beautiful pattern with the dark gray on the top and this paler hourglass pattern here. But there is some distinction, this definitive line between the two colors where it's a little bit blurry here, the shape of the melon. And definitely we often look right in this area where the eye is, there's a little bit more muddiness and darker looking face compared to the eye that pops out and it's a little bit cleaner. But those are really hard to define from a distance, especially, but even close up at times, you don't see all these features and it becomes really hard to tell the difference. But in the late 90s, it was described as a different species, a long-beaked common dolphin, Delphinus capensis. But recently, a lot of it from genetic data has shown that these species are more closely related than originally, or than was thought in the late 90s. So we've now described it as a subspecies. So let's look at the nerdy part here. So the one that has the eye that pops out, the cleaner white face, is a short-beaked common dolphin. The terms are interesting, short-beaked and long-beaked, because it's really only a couple of millimeters difference in the actual length of the beak. But the difference is in the way it looks, because the short-beaked has a more bulbous melon compared to the long-beaked, which is more slanted, so it looks a little bit longer. So anyway, the short-beaked common dolphin is Delphinus delphis, and the long-beaked common dolphin is a subspecies, Delphinus delphis bairdii. And really, that's pretty high level, not stuff you really need to know on the common day. Especially if you're shore based, you're not going to be able to tell the difference. If you're, engaging with people while you're at Bolsa Chica, the only thing that you could do is have a pretty good guess that it is long-beaked or the subspecies, because those are the ones that tend to come a little bit closer to shore. Typically out by the islands is where we see the short-beaked common dolphins. These dolphins are some of the most abundant around the world, hence the name, the common dolphin. And they can be found in pods of up to 10,000. Aerial surveys have seen them in pods that just last for miles. But we do get large pods in this area, and I've seen them in, you know, definitely up to a couple thousand or more. But you'll often see them in large groups. So here looking down, I included this picture because you can really see the markings on the face, even though it's just underwater. They have just such beautiful markings, and there's a lot of variation. So you can get into situations where it's a little bit hard to tell the difference. Does anybody want to guess which one this is? Maybe just between long and short beaked? That is a long beak, somebody is saying. Yeah, we've got a couple of long beaks. Anybody want to guess short beaked or long beaked? Short beaked or long beaked? We've got all longs. That's right. You guys are doing really good. That muddy face, you know, and the slanted melon, and that kind of more fuzzy line, the gradation between the two colors. There's also some differences in, what about this one? Short beaked or long beaked? Short beaked or long beaked? Short beak or long beak? I'm seeing one, short beak, short beak, short beak, long beak. Nope, somebody even changed their mind. I saw that. We've got lots of, Bernardo's trying to make an S, I believe, on his forehead because making the big loser sign is a little bit hard or not appropriate in this case. But you guys are right. You nailed it. These are short beak common dolphin. What about this one? This is a whole quiz for you guys the whole time. Yes, very good. Very good. Very good. What about this one? Oh, very nice, Amber. She got you, Bernardo. Did you see that? She came up with a good S. I like it. She did double-hand it, though, so it was kind of cheating, but it was a good one. I can't remember the letter for S. Is it? No, that's R. S. Can't remember. Anyway. You can also see the post-anal hump here. A nice male common dolphin. A good indication there. And yeah, so this is a beautiful, not to toot my own horn, it just is one of those things that was lucky, but a nice example, a nice photograph of a short beak common dolphin that really shows the differences in the species. And you don't see them in white, but you can see, it looks like, actually, I wonder if that's a remora scar there. It looks a little bit more remora-like than rake marks. Often you'll see scraping marks on dolphins where they've interacted with each other, but we'll take a look at that here. Here you can see these scrape marks are rake marks. The spaces between them have been measured and compared, and typically you might see killer whale rake marks at times, but in this case you can see that it's smaller gaps and little tiny rake marks, and it's the same distance of other common dolphins. And this is one way in the social hierarchy, how they kind of, you know, like reprimand or communicate with each other, little butts and marks. Think about a little, you know, a little slap on the hand kind of a thing, but this is a little bit of the way they interact and create those bonds and maintain their hierarchies within the social structure. And here's one more. I can hardly even test you guys anymore because I think you all know. Yeah, right. Yeah, you guys got this. We're so past, you're so over common dolphins. You guys have nailed it. Very good job. Now I got to get you out in the field and see how you do, because it is a little bit challenging when you're just seeing their dorsal fin and they're jumping in and out really quickly. Who remembers this common dolphin? Does anybody remember this common dolphin? So this, Bernardo was so great to be able to dig this picture up. This was a visitor to Bolsa Chica in 2012. Apparently it was dubbed Bob and Fred, but this common dolphin came in on a high tide when there was enough water, you know, and coming in there, and was in Bolsa Chica, deep in Bolsa Chica, there from April 27th to May 7th. And finally left on May 7th. We don't know the outcome. We, you know, assume it got out and was fine. It did get out on its own. It wasn't, I think, if I recall, I was down there on the 29th of April, taking a look at it, and it was swimming around, but it couldn't seem to find its way out. It seemed healthy enough, and as I said, it left on May 7th, and we wish Bob or Fred or Freddie Bob the best of luck. Was anybody around for that? Does anybody remember seeing the animal that hung out there for the better part of 10 days? It raised, as you can imagine, a lot of community concern. Patty, are you chiming in? Did you know that one? No, I just saw her mute come off, and I thought that might be. Pacific white-sided dolphin. I always bottlenose are definitely near and dear to my heart, but I love these Pacific white-sides. They're such a beautiful dolphin. We don't see them as frequently, but look at this coloration and markings of this animal. They are really a beautiful dolphin. They have this bicolored dorsal fin as well, where the leading edge is dark and the trailing edge is white. It gives them a very sickle-shaped dorsal fin in the distance, if you because sometimes that white will look blend in with the water or the sunlight, and it makes it look like they have a very sharp, pointy, thin dorsal fin. And a very, very short snout here, you can see a longer melon and a very, very short snout, giving them almost no beak looking. Here's another Pacific white-sided dolphin. I'm going to jump through these pretty quick because I want to talk about two more species, and I want to leave time for killer whales, of course. Rhesos are the largest of the dolphins that we see. Oh, second largest of the dolphins that we see off of our area. And they have this coloration that is caused by scarring. If you take a look here, they are all dark gray when they're originally born, and the interactions both with other animals within their pod, but also with squid, their primary prey, will cause scars, and that they tend to scar very white. And so the older the animal is, the more white it gets. So you can see here, you can see some age classes represented by the coloration and the intensive scarring on some of these animals compared to this younger animal here. They don't breach as often. They tend to be these, their scientific name is Greasus grampus, this gray kind of, they're very almost regal in a sense. They're large and they move slowly. They often move all in a single line. They call it an echelon formation when they're all lined up next to each other. It's they're quite beautiful and different. They don't interact with boats in the same way, and they don't always breach. They do breach, but they don't always get as acrobatic as some of these other dolphin species. And here you can see a calf showing you really, they are born, when they're born, they're definitely a much darker and solid gray color. And of course, an always favorite is the largest of the dolphin species, the family Delphinidae, and many people don't think of as a dolphin because of this common word that we're talking about, right? Because killer whale is in its name. And a lot of people are arguing that we should call them orca because killer whale denotes that they're, killers, but they are. So, there's many in their class that are just, they're the ocean's top predators. They have taken out great white sharks and some of the largest, large whales and dolphins. They are experts and so very good at what they do. I think killer whale is appropriate for them. They're beautiful and everybody loves a good killer whale story. And we do get them off of our coast. Mount Monterey is one of the best places to see killer whales. The bigs type, which are the transients. I'll talk about the different classifications or the different ecotypes of killer whales in just a moment. But also, if you, when it's safe to travel again, venture up to Washington, out to the islands there. That's where you can see the resident type or the salmon eaters. They are there during the summer months. But this was taken off of Monterey, but we do see them here. This is right off of the Palos Verdes Peninsula, and we get them in our area every now and then. There's not a distinct timing as much as there is in the Monterey area or up in the Puget Sound or Washington, but just being on the water as often as possible gives you the best chance to get out there and see them. This was a fun story where Bernardo and I we have friends who own a whale watch vessel up in Monterey Bay Whale Watch. Shameless plug, but if you ever go up there, I highly recommend them. And one of the owners is also a killer whale researcher. California Killer Whale Project, they actually just became their own nonprofit, and I recommend if you want to follow them on Facebook, you can get updates, and that would be a really great place to find out if there's killer whales being seen in Southern California, giving you a chance to jump out on a boat too. But it was a pretty fun moment when we got to jump from the commercial whale watch boat down into their inflatable rib here. Mom, don't listen to this story, blah, blah, blah. But we transferred from the large boat down into the rib to be able to go out once we found killer whales and spend the rest of the day out on the water doing killer whale research and assisting and taking pictures to help collect data for their catalog. That was one of my first experiences and super, super exciting. And I remember being on that small boat and being in the middle of the Monterey Bay and over the Monterey Canyon. And it was kind of one of the first times I was like, wow, we're, over 2,000 feet deep water here. And then but at that same moment, it was like, well, it doesn't really matter if it's shallow or deep, because if I'm out of the boat, it's really not a good idea anyway. So, but that had to have been 17 years ago, I think. But I thought it was a fun picture and a fun story. We jumping into this little water vessel. So this is a really great poster that shows the different ecotypes of killer whales. And ecotype is a really specific term to use because all of these animals, not only are they, you can see here, Northern Hemisphere and Southern Hemisphere on the right and left columns. But so they're in different areas, yes, but they all have different migratory paths, different migratory habits, different eating and prey type, and different hunting types. What we have seen with most of these killer whales, though, is really in amazing signs of what we call culture. And how we describe culture is things like sharing the hunt and sharing food and being able to help each other when we were in Monterey, we watched them, two killer whales, both grab different sides of a piece of large whale that they had just killed and work together to tear it apart. Working together to help the pod all be able to feed it was something that was once thought as a primate trait, right? It wasn't really looked at as something that was in other species of animals, and it's a sign of intelligence, and it's one of those arguments that is indicative of how intelligent these animals are. In our Northern Hemisphere, we look primarily at 4 ecotypes, 2 of which are potentially closely related. We'll bump over here and take a look at these. These 3 are the primary ecotypes that we can see off of the Eastern North Pacific. The residents up here in the top left are the ones that can be found in the Pacific Northwest. They rarely range down into California, but they do. They can range down into Northern California in search of salmon. So it's not completely unheard of to see them in California. Offshores have been seen, and they're kind of the most unpredictable of the species that we'll see, and probably why they're called offshore is they tend to be seen offshore the most. They will eat large fish, also likely sharks, and they can tell that because their teeth are worn down quite a bit. And the big killer whales are the ones that will prey on marine mammals. And they also are unpredictable, but we see more frequently, we see them in regular places such as Monterey Bay, which is a really well-known place for them to hunt gray whale calves during the northern migration, but also dolphins and pinnipeds. I'm going to skip these really quickly to give a few minutes to our pinnipeds because I realize I'm, as always, gone over a little bit. But we do, we've started to see pilot whales again. They hadn't been seen here since like the mid 80s, but big warm water mass brought pilot whales up into our area. And I had a couple photos, but apparently pinnipeds here, so we're gonna jump into pinnipeds. I go any questions about dolphins? Yes, Amber.
I believe it was Betsy who had a question.
Oh, sure.
So Betsy, if you want to unmute yourself.
Hey, yeah, I actually have two questions. My first one was you mentioned the notch in the dorsal fin, and I was wondering if that's something that is naturally occurring, or is that something that they get with activity?
Yeah, that's something that the notches tend to be something that come more with age and injury than are naturally occurring. They're not born with the notches, but happen over time. Humpback whales that we looked at last time, the underside of their flukes, they have notched ridges, but most of those are natural. But in the case of the dorsal fin, most of those are notches that come from interactions, hunting, fishing, prey interactions.
They're using those they're taking pictures and they kind of identify them by what their notches look like.
Yes.
Like, sort of.
It blocked out a little bit, but like our fingerprint. Yep. It gives us looks.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And then when you mentioned the Pacific white-sided dolphin being in Bolsa, Chica, was that like just off the coast in the ocean there, or?
It was a common dolphin, sorry, and it was up all the way up by what's the intersection, Warner, and yeah, it wasn't it, Bernardo. That's where we saw it. Was up in that area, like around and down.
It was further. It was further in. It was right at the levee where you along PCH. So
Okay.
it was way past the visitor center.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It was just one common dolphin by itself?
Yeah, some say that it got chased in. There was a lot of speculation, but of course, there wasn't a marine biologist on site to see what occurred and happened. So it was kind of piecing together. Some felt that it had been chased in by other members of its pod, but they don't know if maybe they were fishing, and it's likely they were foraging, and the tide probably went out and it got too shallow for this one lone animal. Maybe he was a little piggy and just needed to stay in there and keep eating, or who knows. But he seemed to be healthy and just swimming around. He really looked okay when we were there.
Okay. All right. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Of course. So we'll keep going until Amber gives me the big red sign to stop and shut up. But so we'll talk about some pinnipeds. We'll talk about the three species we most likely would see, and we'll jump in first about a little bit of the differences and talk about them. So pinnipeds are a suborder of the order Carnivora. They definitely have the big canine teeth and the sagittal crest, which is an indication of all carnivores. But in this case, it's a very, very pronounced sagittal crest on these male sea lions, like you can see here. Let's jump in and take a look. Here is a poster of all the pinnipeds, and you can see body types here. Well, it includes walruses, seals, and sea lions. And I'm just going to jump into a picture that's going to show you a couple of slides here that shows you body types. So right now we're not looking at the individual species, that cute harbor seal and California sea lion, but these body types that show some definitive differences. So our sea lion type animals, or eared seals. So whoops. They're both called, again, this is the problem with common names, right? It gets a little bit confusing, but these eared seals all have these external ear flaps and these long front appendages and rotating where the seals have only a little hole and no ear flap and shorter front flippers. But let's take a look here. So here's our eared seal. This is a big male California sea lion, but you can see the ear flap on our Otaridae, or our eared seals. And then the true seals just have the hole. That would include, true seals would include harbor seals, elephant seals. They're in the family Phocidae. So again, taking a look at the body shape, your seals, the true seals, are a bit more sausage shaped. Fat, short neck, fat, little pudgy animals, where your sea lions or your eared seals have a little bit more long, streamlined body shape overall. We already covered the ears, and you can see those very clearly here, but that's definitely a character that you would look for to be able to know the difference and be the expert in defining whether it's a seal or a sea lion. The front flippers are definitely another feature. These long front flippers on sea lions, well, you're typically not going to be close enough to look where their claws are, but they do have some little rudimentary claws on their digits, but they're long and flat front flippers, where the seals tend to have a little bit shorter, stubbier flippers, and their nails or claws are out at the ends of them. And then their hind flippers are definitely a key character as well. The seals have hind flippers that when they're on land, they drag behind them, where the sea lions hind flippers will actually rotate underneath them, allowing them to really walk on all fours and have excellent locomotion on land. Here you can see sea lions that have been able to literally climb up on rocks using those four appendages. They're really quite good climbers. You can see like this male walking on all fours. So locomotion on land, boy, these sea lions definitely win. On land, the true seals tend to walk a little bit more like a caterpillar. They have to use stomach muscles to pull themselves along. So you can see how that would be moving here with this harbor seal. And again, here's some sea lions high up on rocks. You would never find harbor seals that far up on rocks. There's a little bit of a caveat there, but we'll get to that in a moment. So here's how they move underwater. The sea lions will use their long front flippers for propulsion, and they use their hind flippers as a bit of a rudder, helping them steer. And they're very, very fast underwater and can turn on a dime. Boy, they're really, really accurate. And our seals, they don't seem like they would be very fast underwater, but they can be very quick as well. They spread their hind flippers out, and that becomes their paddles in a sense, with their front flippers kind of close to their bodies. So here you can see the sea lion. This here is a California sea lion. Its front flippers move all the way out, spread out there swimming. And this is a harbor seal, and you can see where his hind flippers are spread out, and that's what he would use to swim underwater. So here's our California sea lion we'll talk about briefly. And I'm sure you all seen California sea lions, probably in Bolsa, Chica, on platforms, on boats, on docks, on anything you can. They're abundant in our area, overly so as a matter of fact. Probably at the tune of over 400,000 now, ranging from up in the Gulf of Alaska down to Baja. In peak years, some 50,000 are born every year out on the Channel Islands. You know, one of the main things that occurred with our California sea lion population is that in the 70s, we just removed all of their top predators, right? We went on a big spree killing a lot of great white sharks, and that's the top predator of California sea lions. And as we remove the top predator, as we do when we mess with keystone species and you know, ecosystems like that, the sea lion numbers just have overpopulated like crazy. Good and bad. I mean, they're having a really negative impact on a lot of places. definitely sinking boats in some cases, making messes of a lot of docks and other facilities. But some people have taken advantage of that. In San Francisco, you can visit Pier 39 and they have a dock in the back behind the shopping area where you can go and take a look at sea lions, and it's quite a popular attraction. And many places where you can go whale watching, you can, they've got piers that they've made where you can look at sea lions. And then pulling up on any bell buoy, you'll often see sea lions as well. So here you can see the large male. There's a lot of sexual dimorphism, not as extreme as we're going to look at elephant seals in a moment, but there is an extreme sexual dimorphism in sea lions. The males can be up to some 800 pounds, and the females topping out at about, oh, I've lost my numbers, about 300 pounds or so. So here you can see this male up on all fours, long front flippers, a California sea lion with his ear flaps, and they have these large sagittal crest, a very exaggerated sagittal crest that you can identify the large males. So once again, here is a female or a juvenile. Hard to tell the difference of a female and juvenile before they develop that sagittal crest. And here you can see large male with that sagittal crest. Here's our sizes: 860 pounds, sorry, for the males, and females up to 240. I was off quite a bit there. And you can see the sexual maturity at 5 to 8 years for the males, and the females will become fully mature at about 4 to 6 years. And they pup in the summer, and the pups will swim within a month and start to wean after about 3 months. And they are trained by their mom to feed. We're going to look at different strategies on each of the 3 pinnipeds that we're going to be looking at. So these are trained by their mother, and they stay with their mother for about 3 months. And this is about the time, usually in after about 6 months or so is when we start to see, you know, if we have any problems offshore, we'll see them start to strand in the area if there's not enough food or prey, or if they're having a hard time. 6 months to a year is when we'll start to see them coming in. And there's definitely been years where we have an abundance of sea lions. Domoic acid is definitely one of the big impacts to our sea lion populations. And here you can see them doing something we call thermoregulating. When they hold their flippers up, they're able to absorb sunlight. They don't have any, they don't have as much fur on their flippers, and they don't have any blubber layer. And they're able to absorb sun, which will then help warm their body. So I always like to think of thermoregulating very much like when you're overheating under a warm blanket and kick your foot out. You know, you don't want to uncover entirely because you're going to get too cold, but you kick your foot out and it cools you off just enough to help regulate you a little bit. So this is a sea lion's way of being able to absorb some warmth outside of the colder water. So now we're going to take a look at harbor seals. I would imagine you get harbor seals in Bolsa Chica quite a bit, popping around in there. They stay pretty low profile when they are swimming around. And if you see them just offshore, they might be just outside the surf, you know. You see them sometimes kind of swimming back and forth, watching people or eating just outside the surf, but they definitely like to keep a low profile, and they don't stay in our area. We don't see big clusters of them, large numbers of them. On the offshore islands, we do see rookeries, and there are a few mainland rookeries. Down in San Diego and La Jolla is one very well-known rookery for harbor seals. We have one in the Port of Los Angeles as well. That's a nice little haul out area that's recently been growing. And up Santa Barbara, Carpinteria Beach, we also see a harbor seal. They have these spotted pelts, and this is beautiful sausage little shape. So here you can see a harbor seal to an elephant seal. When elephant seals are young, before they, when they're in that 3 to 6 months, they can look about the same size as an adult harbor seal. So there's some, you can see they don't have any of the spots that a harbor seal does, and they have a more pronounced snout even at that young pupping age. So here's our harbor seal, and in our eastern North Pacific, they range also from the Gulf of Alaska down to Baja, and the central islands off of Baja is about the end of their range, the extent of their range. And here, so they're mature a little bit younger than our California sea lions, with the, whoops, that font came out kind of low here. The females actually mature at 3 to 4 years. And there's very little sexual dimorphism. So the females and males are going to be at about the same size, 250 to 300 pounds, 5 to 6 feet long. The males maturing just a little bit later than the females do. Again, not a lot of sexual dimorphism. They look very, very similar in size and shape. The males aren't territorial. They don't form a heron like the next example that we're going to talk about with elephant seals. And the pups are born in late winter. And as I mentioned, we're going to talk about these 3 different feeding strategies. Looks like we're getting some good questions. I'll pop up in just a sec. Oh, Amber already got that one for me. Good, thank you. So with harbor seals, they are born in late winter or early spring, and immediately there's critical imprinting that's going to happen, which happens with all of them, and right away within the first hour. And the pups are going to swim immediately after birth, riding on the mother's back when they get tired, which is really adorable, I have to tell you. La Jolla is a great place to see that. If you from the mainland and for an easy to visit place, you can go see this, and it just takes your heart away. It's so cute to see the little pups riding around with mom. They'll nurse for 3 to 4 weeks, and then they do get some training from mom, and then they'll be abruptly weaned. And they're pretty good divers, 1,400 feet or so, and hold their breath for minutes. We didn't talk about that too much with sea lions, comparing that, but with harbor seals, they will kind of eat anything they can find: fish, octopus, and squid. They don't specialize nearly as much. And here you can see the different species and my labels. Let's see. Our harbor seal is about a medium diver. I was going to see if my labels came on, but here is our sea lion, and the elephants definitely win this competition with pinnipeds. Our elephant seals are our deepest divers. And we're going to take a look at them next. And just another look at the spots on harbor seals. You can also photo identify harbor seals by their spots and patterns. If you took pictures of the same locations, same side of the face on all the animals you see, you'd be able to identify the same animals, or, kind of put together your own catalog. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit. Some say I'm probably talking too much, but here we go. I'm still not going to run out here. And again, here's that La Jolla Mother's Cove. A little bit controversial because the locals want to swim in this area, and it was named Mother's Cove and built with this breakwater so that families could go and swim there. But nature took over, and boy, once they start pupping season, this beach is really covered with harbor seals. And they are marine mammals, so they're protected by the Marine Mammal Protection Act, and you can't disturb them during their pupping season. So it's a really great place to go walk up here on this levee and take a look down on the harbor seal pups. This is Carpinteria, another great place to visit, just south of Santa Barbara. And you can also take a look at them from up above and get nice looks at the harbor seals there. Elephant seals. Has anybody been up to San Simeon and checked out elephant seals? We haven't gone in a couple of years, but it's always a fun drive, especially for those of us now that we're just getting a little bit too, sorry, Jana, a little far for you in Colorado, but it's a nice drive in California, especially, oh yes, and James, sorry, that's right, a little far from Quebec as well. But it's a great drive up the coast, make a weekend of it, or Bernardo and I have done it in a day and turned around and come back. So depends on how adventurous you're feeling, but it's worth the trip. And since we've all been locked in long enough, it's probably a nice adventure right now. A growing number of elephant seals along the coast in San Simeon area. And so we'll first talk about their size here. And they, so actually I'll tell a quick story because it was kind of fun. So one day Bernard and I were just going to do our 1-day drive, turn around, go up to Santa Barbara or up to San Simeon and check out the elephant seals. And we just had one of those mornings and we just had a hard time to get going. We just, I don't know, we just kind of slugged around, and then I thought we weren't going to go. Well, we're probably not going to go as it got later and later. And then, no, we're still going to go. So we pop in the car and we get up there, and it's like 2 PM by the time we get up there. Right. So already pretty late in the day. And we get there and we go to the main beach, the first one. And usually we go to the main beach and take a quick look and then kind of go off where there's less people to some of the other beaches where there's, like I said, less people and oftentimes more animals. But we always stop at the main beach first. So here we are late in the afternoon. We get there at 2 o'clock and we go to the first main beach and we see this animal, this female, it's kind of convulsing a little bit. And sure enough, within like half an hour, we were just obsessed with seeing what was going on with this animal. It was convulsing on the beach. And within a half an hour, she gave birth to a pup, a brand new pup, right there before our very eyes. And had we gone earlier in the day, we would never have been anywhere near that beach. We would have gone, checked in there, and headed out someplace else. So it was only because we, kind of took the lazy morning and got up there later that we got to witness this. And it was amazing. Boy, once we saw what was going on, once we kind of figured out what the convulsing was, it was just so captivating to watch the entire process. Yeah, blew us away. So peak breeding season or peak birthing season is right around early to mid-February. So you could have that happen too. You get up there and check it out and maybe you'll witness a birth. It was really, really incredible. So when they're born, they're just 60 to 80 pounds, which I'll tell you that little pup looked much tinier than that, but 60 to 80 pounds at birth. And we're going to talk about their weaning because it's completely different than these other ones that we've talked about. The females can get to be 9 to 12 feet. These males, 14 to 16 feet long. They're the largest pinniped in the northern hemisphere. Their counterpart, the southern elephant seal, is the largest in the world. The male is sexually mature at 9 years and the female much quicker at 4 years. So here's the calendar of elephant seals. This shows you that any time of year you go to San Simeon, you'll find elephant seals. You may find more or less, and there are definitely times of year that they're not going to look as pretty because when they're molting, they have a catastrophic molt, which means they lose all of their fur, and they are definitely a face only a mother can love, but their mother has abandoned them, so they really don't care either. They're not looking their best when they're in their full catastrophic molt. But as you can see here, their pupping happens this time of year. As the female is getting ready to leave the beach, they are mating. The males are mating with them, which is not a friendly and welcome behavior. The females will fight them off, and it's a little bit aggressive, but they will implant their seed. They will impregnate them, but they have a delayed implantation. So they will actually not start to go into gestation until a couple of months down the line. They only have about a 9-month gestation period. So then you notice though, the females have mated and left. And after about 4 weeks now, the pups are on their own and have to learn to swim, eat, everything all on their own. So during this period, the pups are there playing around on the beach, learning to swim. Females come back and juveniles come back in the spring to molt. So they're on the beach molting. Then the males are coming back onto the beach to do their catastrophic molt. Here in the fall, the juveniles may be coming back to shore to rest. But then the males in the late fall are going to start coming onto the beach and establishing their beach territories. They definitely will have, that's the best time to go if you want to see some of those battles that we're going to show you some pictures of here in a second. But they will establish their beach and wait for their harems to start to arrive. Here is the typical feeding grounds of males and females, and they have a lot of site fidelity. So all the tagging data shows that they will go back to the beach born at, and they will continue to go back to the beach they're born at. And look at where they're going to feed. And then remember what I said about those pups. They're abandoned. They're completely abandoned after a month, and they don't even know how to swim or what they eat when they're leaving, when they're laying there on the beach, fat and crying, and they've been nursing from mom, and now they're abandoned, and they are used to drinking milk and having it come to them. And now suddenly they have to figure out how to swim and what they eat. And look where they end up. It's really just amazing to me that they end up here out in the middle of the ocean, finding their prey and making it back to the same beach that they were born at. Just incredible animals when you think about these things. Here's a male in stages, a young male, and then you can see that it's getting a bigger and bigger proboscis and more scarring until you can see this very, very adult male. That scarring is from them throwing that proboscis, and they've got also large canines there and throwing them at each other's chest in big aggressive battles to establish their territories. This is almost all weaners, we call them, after they've been weaned. And weaned, I think in this in this case is a kind of a funny term, because there's really not any weaning, really. It's straight abandonment. So I don't know, the abandees is really a better name for them. But they've all been left. There's a few adults, females still on the beach, but this is March. This is off of an island down in Mexico that we visit every year with the Cabrillo Aquarium's trip down into Baja. And so we see this little patch every year of all these pups that haven't yet even figured out probably where to swim or what they're going to eat. And this is a pup and its mom. This is a little piggy. It's been feeding, and this is a nursing pup here in the back. And I'm recognizing the time. So how are we doing, Amber? I mean, people are still hanging on, but should I wrap up? Or, I mean, I've got just a couple more minutes of elephant seals to finish up, or I can just end here and we can do questions.
Yeah, we can wrap up with elephant seals and then have time for a couple questions.
Yeah, I just have a couple more slides so we can answer any questions. So here these pups are just starting to figure out what they eat. This one has kelp all over its face. They've been recorded trying to eat rocks, with rocks in their mouth, playing around, kelp in their mouth, trying to figure things out. Really, it's just incredible that they have no idea what they're going to do. And they're adorable. They've got very, very large eyes to help them to see, but a lot of their senses, they'll sleep as they're diving down into the depths to get their prey. They are a very, very deep diving pinniped, and will eat squid primarily down at depth. Cutest little buggers though ever. And here's one kind of telling me to back off, but also like mom, kind of doing the mom call here a little bit. Oh yeah, fewer pictures than I thought. So this is the last of them. This is a southern elephant seal, and this is a researcher approaching this, but I love this. Don't try this at home, because you really shouldn't ever walk up on an elephant seal, even if you're in San Simeon and it looks like they're sleeping. Trust me, when they need to charge, they can charge fast, and we've seen it almost happen too many occasions on our island adventures and stuff. So give them a wide berth, and don't ever walk between water and a pinniped. So I think that's really the end of it, and I can answer any questions, or we can wrap up however we want.
I think there was one question in the chat.
Does the mother stay on shore with the pup for the first month? Which species are you talking about? Elephant seals, Betsy?
I think that was
Yes.
Betsy. I think that was harbor seals, right?
I think, yeah, it was either harbor seals or sea lions, the ones that you said that they don't teach them, they don't learn to swim until they're a month old.
That's the elephant seals, and the mother will feed them. Yeah, she stays on the beach, and they nurse from their mother. They definitely have, will imprint as well. They have a couple of catastrophes that can occur while they're young and feeding. And one is large waves and storms that will sweep a pup away from the mother. And being able to get them to reconnect, but also a charging bull or a bull that's rushing out to the ocean has been known to, you know, kind of, it doesn't care if there's a female or a pup in the way. So they have to be very, very careful. And it has happened where they get smushed. But yeah, the mother will stay and feed them and get them nice and plump and fat to be abandoned.
Okay, so the mother doesn't necessarily need to have access to water, or like where's she getting the food from?
At that
Or
time,
they're just nursing.
Yeah, she's
They're
just
nursing. Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah. But she will leave the beach. She'll go into the water and come back, but she's primarily just nursing.
Okay, thanks.
Do any cultures eat pinnipeds? Oh, that's a good question. Probably. I mean, they were definitely hunted, hunted for their pelts, and I'm sure also hunted. I don't know the details, Jenna, about, but I don't know that currently if any cultures are still eating pinnipeds.
To my knowledge, there are some, I forget the name specifically. Some like Canadian, like native peoples traditionally will hunt seals or like Arctic seals. I can't remember the name.
Yeah, I would
of
imagine
the-
a lot of
Yeah, fur seals, and then they'll also
polar
hunt.
regions, probably in Russia as well. But
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely some that are still taken for fur.
Yeah, I would have to look that
Yeah,
one up
question.
to be specific, but it's mostly for traditional hunting
Hunts,
value.
yeah.
Yeah.
Looks like Susan, do you have a question? Susan Hardgrave?
No, I don't really, except for can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay. We hiked out 3 miles over the sand dunes to Año Nuevo.
Oh, awesome.
Got the seals, like it's in the, what they call it, the Deadly Triangle or whatever. And there's an island off there. And then there's a lineup of about 50 seals, or well, not seals, I'm sorry, elephant seals. And I believe they were all males, but they must have been juveniles, and they were just like, you know, dominoes stacked out there. And then there were some out playing and fighting, play fighting and stuff like that. And then the rest of them were lying in the sand, and they were using the flippers to flip sand on each other. So I guess so they wouldn't get sunburned. But there's a big issue with, you know, they were just the great whites were out there just waiting for them.
Oh, no, I'll do that. Gerald is asking about the brain size of dolphins compared to other mammals. You know, in general, Gerald, the brain size of all odontocetes they have a large brain to body ratio. In dolphins, it is quite pronounced. I believe in killer whales, it's the largest, but it is a large ratio. Yeah, good question. Well, thanks everybody.
Awesome.